Denver Broncos Mile High View, no commercials, no bullshit. What I'm going to say, of course, isn't going to be popular. That's how I roll. One of the things that's made John Elway a bit of a cancer, a bit of kryptonite to the Denver Broncos, is basically his failures to come through. When he says slogans like "Win Now," which is the correct thing to say, it's the correct thing to do. It's fallen on. It's been so abysmal. The job he did, as far as "Win Now" is concerned, that absolutely turns everybody off. Even though it is the right thing to do, and it is the direction the Broncos should always be going in. It is just so cliche now with John Elway. But what I'm going to give you the serious, no bullshit. How do we start really getting this team back on track? Now, already people are going on and on about the draft, and I want to say pump the brakes on the draft. Why don't we do the logical thing for once as a Denver Broncos community? Just can we do it once? The logical, correct steps. Let's first look at free agency. Because free agency comes before the draft. Now, what you do in free agency, doesn't that absolutely dictate how the draft goes? Okay? Can we address free agency first before even getting involved in the draft and take a look at who's available? This segment I'm going to get into is the offensive line. And I'm going to throw the tight end position in there. The thing is, you hear a lot of talk all over the place about the offensive line has got to improve. And people look at games like the Lions game, and, oh, well, look at this. You know, this was the best game. And then if you take a look at the Cleveland game, you think they were run-blocking juggernaut. Okay, and then people, oh, well, you know, it improved some. But when you actually look at how they stacked up to, like, defenses, Buffalo, Kansas City would come up, and other defenses, they were shredded. And we saw all season long, you had somebody that had nothing to do with the Broncos do an evaluation on Drew Lock. You saw him, he said, what's up with these free runners? And you saw free runners all season long for the pass blocking. And I wanted to break down film on how horrible they were at run blocking most of the season, with the exception of, games like the Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns, these teams, that never made the playoffs, by the way. We beat these teams that were in the playoffs. Well, let's pump the brakes here a little bit. First of all, the Texans don't have really the best defense out there. And when you took a look at all the playoff teams, plus they completely got all their play calling wrong. They were zigging when they should have been zagging. So that game was also an anomaly. But when you look at the bulk of the games, the offense is not very good. And if I could have only broke down footage where you see the horrible run blocking, especially with the tight ends too. I'll stick to my guns that Philip Lindsay absolutely would have been a 12 to 1,500 yard rusher consecutively last year and this year had the Broncos had a marquee offensive line. Even the uninspiring Royce Freeman, I believe, would have been a 4-yard per carry running back behind a marquee offensive line. It's very, very important that, the Broncos get the offensive line right, or you're going to be everybody's going to forget about the 4 wins of Locke, and they say, well, look, and everybody will focus on Locke, just like they did Brady when he doesn't have anybody, the people he had around him. This whole idea of waving magic wands is people listen to themselves say the same thing over and over and actually believe it's true. You have to put good player personnel around these quarterbacks. They wanted to drum out Drew Brees. Okay? So I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this offensive line that it is critical that they do what they haven't done since the downfall of Peyton Manning, going back probably all the way to 2013 or 14, as the line kept going down. This is why I'm putting a huge emphasis on this offensive line, and I believe free agency is really the key. Do you know that John Elway has gone through 10, I think, different right tackles since he's been here? 10. Like 5 different coaches, and they still can't get it right. So the way I look at it is I'm done with it. I mean, if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, you should have never got Ron Leary on that deal. Should you have let the centers go without bringing in centers that could take their place? Elway's had this thing about getting rid of centers. The good ones anyway, or at least serviceable ones. I wouldn't say they were exactly over the top, but serviceable. So we have seen since towards the end of Peyton Manning's career, the offensive line go down. So here's what I've come up with. James, if James isn't out of here, the whole James debacle is a topic all to itself. I'm the guy that pounded the table not to bring Joe Flacco in. Okay, and the one redeeming thing Joe Flacco did is he pointed out to Rich Scangarello and his pussyfooting around on offense. That was his one redeeming thing that he did, as an MVP, a former MVP. He actually voiced what everybody knew and everybody wanted to say. So give him that. But looking at the offensive line, it was illogical to bring in Joe Flacco. We told you, all of us who said not to bring in Joe Flacco, we told you it was a statue. And what were we told? We didn't know what we were talking about. And then we saw what it was. Okay? This is why I have a channel. And I'm on record. You can go back where I'm pounding the table not to bring him in. I equally pounded the table not to bring Juwan James in because he would bring all that garbage in with him that he brought in that he was doing in Miami. And now there's talk that, we'll just be stuck with him. No. You can cut him just like you cut the guy from the Raiders, whatever the hell that guy was, another one of those, Elway. And this is what Elway does. Elway looks at the price tag, Leary, Juwan James, and he says, I've got to have the best. He doesn't look at the quality of the player. He just looks at the price tag. And that's been the problem with John Elway in the free agent market. And now it seems like everybody, now we're afraid to even look at the free agent market because he's done such a horrible job at free agent in the free agent market. So, but you can't. That's where, and I'm just saying this right now, if you are serious, if you're absolutely serious about rebuilding the Denver Broncos, if you're serious about the win now, which you should be, it's absolutely true, you should be looking at first free agent, what you got in free agent. So in my opinion, again, if the Broncos don't get rid of Juwan James, I believe the Bowlens should get together and fire John Elway, just on that alone. I'm not kidding you. That, to me, is a fireable offense. These bad free agent hires that Elway does, that we get stuck with, has got to end. All right, I had to break this thing in half because this thing would have went over 20 minutes. Because the next segment, if you stick with it, I go into all my picks. And like I said at the beginning of this video, it's much more important right now to focus on free agency because that will dictate what you do in the draft. Free agency now is really the important subject Bronco fans really should be talking about.